And welcome to the May 12th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. A meeting was held at 6 p.m. in the conference room at City Hall for clarification of the agenda. The following is the official agenda of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Discussion and commission action will be limited to those items on the agenda. Any citizen who wishes to address the commission shall first be recognized by the chair and shall give his or her name and address for the record. If a citizen wishes to read documentation of any sort to the commission, he or she shall first seek permission from the chair. There is a 3-minute time limitation for presentations to the commissions. This evening's agenda items are: Agenda item 1, if Aislinn, if you could call roll call and ask for disclosure of conflict of interest, ex parte communication, and site visit from the commission.
Here, and I'm going to recuse myself from agenda item number 3 due to conflict of interest.
Jeremy Marley.
Jeremy Marley, if you could unmute yourself, please state your name and whether or not you had conflict of interest.
I should have no conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you for attending tonight.
Rich Phillips.
My name is Rich Phillips. I was able to make a site visit and I have no conflict of interest.
Shin-Kyu Roo.
Here, I made a site visit to agenda item number 3 and I have no conflict of interest.
Commissioners that are attending on the go-to meeting, when you're not speaking, could you please mute your microphones? Thank you.
Shin-Kyu Roo.
Here, I made a site visit to agenda item number 3 and I have no conflict of interest.
Samantha Stoddard.
Samantha Stoddard, and here I did not make a site visit and I have no conflict of interest.
Kaylee White.
My name is Kaylee White. I did not make a site visit and I have no conflict of interest.
And Jill Kirkham is excused this evening.
Thank you for taking roll. If we could move on to agenda item 2, approval of the minutes. Commission members, if you could look over those minutes, and I would accept a motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Second.
To approve the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. So we've got Rich Phillips with a motion to approve the minutes and Crystal Shanda seconding those. Aislinn, if you could call for a vote, please.
Phillips.
Yes.
Shanda.
Yes.
Marley.
Yes. Yes.
Roo.
Yes.
Stoddard.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 3, which is a public hearing. We do have an explanation of hearing procedures, so I will list those now. We have a 10-minute time limit on application presentation, and also a 10-minute time limit on a group presentation that will be offered tonight. There will be a 3-minute time limit on other public testimony. Names are required for those presenting and testifying. Questions and comments should be pertinent to the application and be addressed to the commission. Please refrain from asking the same questions or making the same comments. As this is a public hearing, there should be no questions, comments, or applause from the audience. Should the meeting go longer than 8 p.m., the commission may take a scheduled 10-minute break. Commission members must make their decision regarding the application on facts already in record and information presented at the public hearing. Conflicts of interest, site visits, and ex parte contacts by commission members will be acknowledged. Protocol requires that commission members and audience be recognized by the commission chair prior to speaking. Agenda item 3 is a planned unit development known as Breezy Commons Townhouses. Jonathan Vincent, who is represented by Rocky Mountain Engineering and Surveying, has submitted an application for a planned unit development to develop 7.39 acres, more or less, into 56 residential townhomes and common area. The proposed PUD, or planned unit development, is located east of Philbin Road and north of Cottage Avenue. I declare the public hearing open. And if I could have the presentation from the applicant at this time.
You bet. Good evening, Madam Chairman, Commission members. My name is Brady Smith with Rocky Mountain Engineering and Surveying, 600 East Oak Street, Pocatello, Idaho, 83201. Here tonight representing the applicant, Jonathan Vincent, on this project. As mentioned, our request is to do a planned unit development for a 7.39 acre piece of ground that also includes some industrial area to the south. The most northerly part of that's zoned RMS would be split into 56 residential townhomes in common area, and then the southerly piece would be where the storage units would be placed. We have been with staff on this quite a bit over the last 2 to 3 months through site plans and different other types of meetings, trying to get a configuration that we felt would blend as good as we could get it. We do recognize that this is a higher dense use, which is why we're going for the PUD process and trying to get this approved as such. As you guys are probably aware, as you see a lot of things come before you, the housing markets are trending upward all the time, and entry-level housing really does not exist anymore. That may change as the future goes along, but as we sit right now, a lot of what we're seeing come through our doors is a higher intense use, townhouses, fourplexes, things that in general terms in the history of development aren't the most popular. We recognize that. But we also recognize that, not everyone can afford a $350,000 starter home. So just wanted to kind of give you a little background as to why we are where we are and why this use is being sought. This is a demand or a market that's very intense right now. There's a lot of developers looking to do this type of development because it's affordable, and it is, something that is actually giving what we hope is another option, another affordable housing option, which I know is very important to the city as it does its expansion. One of the benefits of this project is it's a little more concentrated, and so even though I know a lot of people might not recognize this that are living in traditional subdivisions, but we can be a lot more efficient with our utility designs, our housing footprints, and everything is a lot more condensed and central. So that's what we've tried to accomplish here. When we initially brought this before staff at a site level plan review, or a site plan review, we actually had our buildings pretty far to the north. And then you'll see in your packet, if you kind of read back in the back, there was some markups that kind of indicate and show our original rendering, which kind of had our buildings quite a bit closer to the Breezy Point Division 1 line. As we got talking through some of this stuff, it was brought to our attention that a better configuration of this could be explored, and so we went back to the drawing board a little bit and actually was able to configure this in a much better fashion to give us quite a bit more buffering on that north, which we hope will, again, we realize it's not going to be popular by everybody's vantage point, but we do feel like this shift that we did make provides a much bigger, larger buffer than what would be traditionally, seen if we were, wanting to kind of snug things up or even try to get, more units if we could park them. So we hope that that's something that you'll consider as a positive as you look this over. We're trying to provide, some more buffering because we knew that there would be some contrast with obviously going from single-family residential to these proposed townhouses. With that and within the development, we're trying to kind of provide some in-project amenities and uses that the complex can actually get use out of. I will tell you that there are still a couple of gray areas that I'm not sure of, and so if we need to add those as conditions as this goes along, or follow up with the developer who's not able to be here tonight, that's something I just kind of wanted to get out there, because with some of the feedback that we received in letter form and some of the requests that the surrounding neighbors are asking for, you know, I can't speak to every single detail, so I just want to make sure and mention that, and we may have to, you know, we'll answer what we can or what I know of, but if there are some things that aren't able to be answered, or really, you know, we don't know yet how everything's going to work out, you know, we may have to, you know, follow back up or circle back with those folks on that. But in general, we're trying to bring in a higher dense use that actually meets the needs of the community right now, and we feel like we've came up with a pretty good plan that accomplishes this. I will tell you that the storage to the south has been kind of talked about and as discussed in some of this commentary. There were some questions asked about whether that's going to be used for just the tenants of this complex, or if it's actually open to anyone. Initially, I know the developer's plans is to try to offer those to his tenants first. You know, they would have the first right of any of those units, but not knowing if every one of those will get taken up, there's also the option that he would like to explore of being able to rent those units out to the public if he doesn't have enough demand from his residents. So again, that's one of those things where we're not sure what the market's going to dictate on that, but I know all things being equal and available, if his tenants need those units, they're theirs first. So that is one that kind of came up. There is kind of a split in the zone right there, so I want to kind of talk about that a little bit. We're providing a 20-foot landscaping buffer strip that's going to happen there to kind of give us that transitional effect. The storage units and the shop that's proposed on this map is allowed by current zone that is there with the light industrial. And then obviously our residential and the RMS is what we're doing north of that line. So I do think it's taken us quite a while to get here with the back and forth with the city, but we've tried to accommodate a lot of the different feedback that we've received. I also want to mention that the developer, I know there was some comments about people not being, you know, informed until the public notices came out, but I know Jonathan did make a couple of different efforts on a couple of different days to try to go door to door. Obviously busy schedules and things might not have allowed for everyone to be met, but I know that there was a lot of comment from the city and us to make sure that those upfront attempts were made, because we knew that there was going to be some concern with the difference in use that's here. But in a grand scheme, if you look at what's happening to the north of Breezy Point, and if you look at what's happening to the south, we feel like with what we're proposing, it's very consistent. If not just a little bit of a step up. I know that that's an eye of the beholder kind of comment, but from what I'm looking at in terms of what these townhouses are intended to be, they're going to look different than the fourplexes that are currently going in on Quinn Road. So there is a little bit of a different theme there. These are going to be intended to be individually owned and occupied by their owners. So when we come back through with our preliminary plat, some of you are familiar with what we did up on Trail Creek, where those units are individually owned, and that's the intent here, is that these will be individually sold to individual owners, but it will be managed by an HOA so that everything is handled and kept up to the same standard, so that each owner is not, you know, going away from, you know, dressing up his front porch or letting things get out of hand or not taking care of his frontage. So I do want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. We've read through the conditions that staff has mentioned, and we were made well aware of those kind of up front, so we have no issues trying to adhere to those standards. We also see the comments that we need to bring before you on our next meeting for pre-plat, should this be approved tonight by your body, and we see no issues with that. One of the big comments that comes up every time is traffic. And we know that traffic is a big concern to everyone. And we are in the process of putting together the numbers that we will be providing as part of our preliminary plat documentation that we hope will at least give us some idea of what's going to happen with this project, the impact that it will have. And, from there, that's when different, potential traffic calming efforts or things get proposed. It all starts with kind of the upfront study. We did a similar study on the Breezy Apartments project that's just about, half a mile northeast of this proposed project when we came through for that PUD that you guys might be familiar with last year. And what we found with that is that as much as the neighbors might think that this is going to just completely throw the traffic off the rails, in the grand scheme of things, it's not as impactful as one might think. So we're planning to do that. I realize I'm out of time, so I'll try to button this up, but we're good with the comments. We'll try to answer what we can on our rebuttal, but for now, we just ask for you to consider approving this PUD as presented with the conditions stated in the staff report. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commission members, are there any questions at this time for the applicant? Seeing no questions from the commission at this time, can we have the staff presentation, please?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. My name is Carl Anderson. I'm one of the senior planners here for the city of Pocatello. You have before you for consideration a proposed plan unit development to facilitate the Breezy Commons development to 56 zero-lot line townhome dwelling units. This application has been submitted by Jonathan Vincent and is represented by Rocky Mountain Engineering and Surveying. The total land area involved in the PUD tonight is 7.39 acres and is zoned both residential medium-density single-family and light industrial. Residential medium-density single-family to the north, light industrial to the south. The subject PUD will be followed by a preliminary and final plat at a later date, pending approval of the PUD. It should be noted that this is the first of 2 required public hearings. This is the first public hearing of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and a second will be held with the City Council, in which they will make the final decision. The common area will provide for additional parking, open space, stormwater retention, a walking path, and a dog park area are some of the proposed amenities that the applicant is showing within the common area on their plans. The minimum lot size required for a townhome in the RMS zoning district is 4,000 square feet. The total area incorporated in the proposed PUD that is zoned RMS, in which townhomes are permitted, is 5.24 acres, or 228,254 square feet, more or less. The applicant is proposing a total of 56 zero-lot length dwellings, as previously mentioned. Therefore, a total minimum lot size required for the total townhomes proposed is 224,000 square feet. When taking the total lots in the subdivision, including common area, the minimum lot size is 475 square feet, or excuse me, 4,075 square feet. The total parking required for the total parking area required for the entire development is 113 parking spaces, and the applicant is proposing 161 parking spaces to be held in common. The south 2.15 acres of the proposed project is zoned light industrial, which permits storage units outright, provided all other zoning requirements are met, so landscaping, lighting, setbacks, parking, etc. The applicant has requested 2 exemptions as part of the planned unit development application. These requests include a waiver to the requirement that all portions of a building be retained on the individual lots, so a portion of the setback requirement, and a request to waive the minimum setback requirement of the RS zoning district. The applicant is proposing that the eaves of these townhome structures be permitted to extend beyond their property lines and would be contained in a 2-foot easement as required by the conditions in the staff report. And additionally, where these are zero-lot line townhomes, where a townhome would normally have setbacks on the front and rear, and if it's an outside unit on the side, these would basically be right up to the property line, so a zero-lot line townhome. Additionally, the buildings on the eastmost property line are set back 10 feet from the adjacent property line as opposed to the 20-foot requirement. Staff has proposed that in order for this waiver to be granted, a landscaping buffer be provided along that eastmost property line. So 1 tree for every 20 feet of linear frontage along that eastmost property line. If the commission is not amendable to that requirement, staff would recommend that they remove the parking in front of those units and bring it back to the commission for review, meeting that 20-foot requirement. Both requests are discussed under staff analysis contained in 1702-140C1. All noticing requirements for this application have been met, and 2 written comments have been received. One was received when the packet went out, and the second was received in an email to the commission and provided to the commission here today. A written comment received after the agenda was provided to the commission today. In consideration of the application and proposed development, staff concludes that the planning and development request is compliant with Pocatello Municipal Code, provided that all recommended conditions are met. Be advised that all of the staff's recommended conditions are contained on page 7 of the staff report. Just to go through a couple conditions to highlight, there are 14 conditions that staff's recommending at this time. Condition number 12 has been met. The applicant has provided a purchase sale agreement between the current landowner and the applicant. Condition number 6, the storage units and shop be finished in a style similar to the townhome development in order to provide continuity throughout the development. Traffic impact analysis is required at the time of preliminary plat, as required by our Public Works Department. And a final landscaping plan shall be submitted at the time of the initial building permit application and shall be compliant with all landscaping requirements of Pocatello Municipal Code. So some of these requirements include street trees adjacent to Philbin, and the interior lot landscaping requirement is 10% for that parking area. So just to make sure that we're meeting all of our landscaping requirements. The applicant shall provide verification that the proposed storage units are not within the adjacent Fort Hall irrigation easement or other documentation from Fort Hall Irrigation District verifying that the storage units are permitted in their current location. Should that condition not be met, those storage units would need to be moved outside of that easement. A 10-foot wide landscape buffer with a side obscuring fence and a solid wall at least 6 feet in height shall be erected along the common property line abutting the adjacent residential zone to the east. The landscape buffer shall contain at least 1 tree, a minimum caliper of 1 1/2 inches during planting for every 20 lineal feet of common lot line. Each tree planted no less than 20 feet apart, and the species shall be selected from those among those which are identified in the City of Pocatello Master List of Acceptable Trees. And finally, sidewalk and landscaping shall be installed adjacent to Philbin Road to the west to match the adjacent development to the north of the property. So again, those are some high-level conditions that I just wanted to highlight. I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you for your presentation, Carl. At this time, do we have any questions for Carl from the commission? Okay, I do have a question, and I apologize, it is more directed toward the applicant and possibly even the owner more than RMES. But you used 2 of my favorite terms in your presentation, and that was HOA and affordable. Oftentimes, those 2 things don't go hand in hand. So if you could elaborate on how the owner sees these properties to remain affordable with an HOA present, and then also what he may see them going for.
Well, I can't speak to the market values as I'm not a real estate agent, so I can tell you what similar housing was going for in Chubbuck that's probably similar to this. I think the price point was ranging from the start of the project $190,000, and I think by the end they were around $220,000.
Okay.
So I would say that, you know, again, as you know, the market is always changing. That's the most recent example, so that would probably be a good baseline. But in terms of beyond that, and if it's went up since then, obviously even through the project being built and finished out, it had jumped $30,000. So, but if you start looking at, and I don't know if any of you have been able to look at some of the housing going on out here in the general area, but you know, even just an entry-level home nowadays is hard to get into for under $220,000. So I think they're trying to try to get into that entry-level area. In terms of the HOA and how that is intended to be ran, each of the tenants would be paying into a fund, I guess you would say, or a pot of money that would be used to make sure all of the different, landscaping, snow removal, taking care of the facility or the complex as a whole, so that it doesn't just fall to each individual owner. They would all be aware of that. I believe that's actually written into the covenants that are in the packet. And again, that's a draft document, so there may be some things that need to be added or cleared up or cleaned up to make it more to, everyone's liking. And I think the developer is definitely willing to try to do what he can to meet those changes if they come. But basically, everybody is going to be pitching into an overall, HOA fund that would take care of all of their outside work that's associated with keeping the complex nice. Now, in terms of, how well they work and if they're affordable, I mean, that's going to be, each owner's decision, I believe, when they purchase that. That's all going to be fully disclosed at the time of the sale, that they are part of that association and those expectations are that they're met. I do know that the developer, when I asked him about that same thing, his comment to me was, if they can even get half of the tenants to pay, there's a very good chance they can make everything work. So he's done the paperwork, he's done the penciling, and he feels that if he can at least get half or more of his people to honor that agreement, that he would be in good shape. So he feels like he has a pretty good buffer there if some people were, late or delinquent. I mean, they're gonna definitely have their board of governors set up on that, and obviously the way they receive those funds wouldn't just be forgotten. They would certainly still go to try to get that, but he does recognize that people may be late, people might not always have their portion paid on time, so he has thought through some of that financial structure.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission for staff or the applicant at this time? Okay. Seeing no questions, is there any additional written correspondence that was submitted for the record that has not already been presented? Okay. So at this time, we will open it up for testimony. Reminder that there is a 3-minute time limit on public testimony, with the exception of the one group testimony we have that will be represented by Crystal Shanda, and that is opened up for 10 minutes. So at this time, we'll have testimony by those supporting the application.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Crystal Chanda, Kinghorn, Breezy Point subdivision. I am representing 23 individuals from our neighborhood, including myself and my husband in that. I am going to be reading from some notes that you were provided with, so Madam Chair, I'd ask your permission to refer to those notes as I speak.
Yes.
Thank you. Of course, our first concern is lighting. We would like to assure that all the lighting requirements meet Code 1705-410. In addition, we ask that no lights will be allowed to be placed on the sides of the building facing north that are closer than 40 feet to the property line. We request that any lighting proposed for the common area be placed on a timer that turns off the lights overnight. A reasonable times for these lights to be off can be determined by the staff. As safety is a concern for the lights in the common area, we would ask that they be placed on a motion sensor. We request that trees be required along the north fence line as well. Although there is a buffer of open space, the new townhomes will be taller than our homes, and this will add extra privacy for the current residents in single-family homes. We would like to request that one tree per minimum caliper of 1.5 inches during planting be placed every 20 linear feet between the common lot and as described in condition 10 of the Planning and Zoning staff report. Storage units are known to attract thieves, and this is a concern for our families. We would like to assure that the units are used for the use of residents of the townhome only and will not be open to the general public. We would request that the units be continuously lit in a way as so not to disrupt the neighbors to the south. The winds in this area tend to feel like they're blowing from the west. With nothing to block them across the Philbin, it's common occurrence for trash cans to be blown over and the trash is blown with them. We have concerns about some of the dumpsters in the town's homes, and it's possible for their lids to be left open and the trash blown out to the adjacent property. We would request that the trash enclosure shown located in the northwest corner of the property be moved further away from the property line and closer to the center of the property. While the private property will be required by code to maintain their snow on their own property, we are concerned with where the plowed snow will be stored during the winter. We request that this location be identified on the plans and that it's clear that snow is not to be piled outside of the property lines. And of course, as Brady said, traffic. Traffic is a continuous concern in our neighborhoods as homes are being built around us. As he mentioned, we have fourplexes to the north of us, apartments to the northeast of us, and now townhomes to the south of us. Cars enter our subdivision off Philbin Road with a speed limit of 45 miles an hour, and they continue to go this speed through our subdivision. We understand that a traffic study will be completed and changes may be required. We hope these changes address traffic entering and exiting Philbin. It is currently very difficult to safely enter Philbin from Kinghorn Road during peak hours. Turning on to Kinghorn Road from Philbin also presents challenges. Cars are reluctant to slow down for cars turning onto Kinghorn and try to go around them on many occasions. This scenario occurs for traffic going both north and south, and it's only a matter of time before an accident occurs. We hope this is addressed in the traffic impact study. In the meantime, we would strongly like to urge the City of Pocatello Street Department place 25-mile-an-hour speed signs on both Kinghorn Road and Breezy Point for traffic in both directions for the safety of the residents in this area. We would also like to request that once the project is under construction, the main construction entrance be off Philbin. We would like the entrance from Breezy Point Drive to be closed to traffic during construction. This entrance should be blocked with concrete jersey barriers until the certificate of occupancy is granted by the city. In the event that the construction phase is not complete at the time of occupancy, some of the townhouse entrances, the entrance should be restricted for construction use. I also want to mention last, it's very evident that Rocky Mountain has done their due diligence trying to make this the best that they can, and we thank them for that. And hopefully we're going to have some great new neighbors, and it'll be easier for us. Thank you.
Any further testimony by those supporting the application? Yes?
I just have a few things to say, and I concur with a lot with what you were saying. I'm Kathy McPherson. I live on Philbin Road next door to the proposed town site with the RV storage. I recognize that the proposed townhouses are legal and may meet most requirements, but being legal does not mean that it's right. Pocatello is growing in leaps and bounds, and around town there's barely an empty lot that doesn't have some construction. The world has discovered how wonderful Idaho is, and news travels fast. Pocatello needs to pre-plan its future because we are starting it right now, and it's growing leaps and bounds. Back to the townhouses. I'm actually contesting the population density and quality of the townhouses. These appear to be inexpensively built, to me, not attractive. 4-bedroom, 2-story townhouses appear to have up to 8 people in each unit with 56 units. That makes 448 people on 7.5 acres. Include their pets, toys, extra vehicle supplies, and pretty soon it appears overcrowded. The proposed fencing and siding is vinyl, so that does not have a long lifespan in cold weather. There is no dedicated personal garage for each home, and only some optional storage rental areas will be available, but not to each tenant. This area will have more homes crammed together than a trailer park, and it's unfair to the surrounding single-family units to have put this condensed living area with the extra noise and the traffic, and I feel it may devaluate our homes. As mentioned, Philbin is an extremely busy road, and I know the traffic study will show that. What it won't show is the huge sand, cement, potato, and construction trucks that are constant. Connor Academy has added 500 students right up the street that parents drop off and pick up their students. And soon the Hoku plant with a sports center located at the other end of Philbin Road will draw hundreds more vehicles. Exit onto Philbin Road is difficult enough as it is. And though you are allocating some room for widening, it really isn't enough. In that area, I believe that we need to have 6 lanes to include turnout lanes for left-hand turns into that area and street parking. Right now, this lot is currently an alfalfa field, and there is no Philbin Road gutters, drains, or water runoff provisions for rain or snow. I leave you with this. Contractors don't really care about future issues. They will move on to the next project. I hope we will do what's right and think about the future. Thank you.
Thank you for that testimony. Moving on to more testimony by those supporting the application. Testimony by those uncommitted. And testimony by opponents to the application. Okay. Seeing no further testimony, open this time for rebuttal by the applicant.
Thank you. So one of the things I want to just state, I think if you compare even the commentary that came in today in the email along with the testimony that was just given by, I think it was Kathy McPherson.
Right.
A lot of the staff's conditions that are placed upon us for this project lend themselves very well to a lot of the conditions brought up here. So rather than hitting them on each specific topic, I would say globally that we do hear what is being said, and I think there's a lot of the comments that have been brought up that we can, with some creativity, incorporate and still meet the mark in terms of trees where asked for, lighting makes sense, the timer thing seems reasonable, all those things seem like a reasonable deal. There are a few things that I guess I would focus on that kind of stay outside of that, where it gets to kind of a, for instance, the personal opinion that the units look, cheap, for lack of a better term. That's certainly her opinion, but I can tell you from other projects in the area that are going, the units do not seem to be on the market very long, so they're obviously appealing to some people. So I think you have to take that all together. One person's opinion should not dominate 56 individual rights to purchase a townhouse if they so desire. So I don't want to get adversarial at any part of this, but I do want to say there are some things where it kind of seems like everything's being requested and do this, do that, do whatever, and you're basically trying to spend someone's money. But with that, I want to say that the developer's mindful of the comments that have been brought before us, and we will try our best to adhere to as much as we can. There are some things, like traffic, for instance. The studies come in, there may be something presented that says we need, this, intersection improved, And then there's always the question of should that fall on the entire development or, the neighbors too, because everybody's contributing to that traffic, right? So there is kind of always that back and forth that happens. And usually, credit to the city, there's always usually a way we can kind of meet in the middle and figure out a reasonable solution. But I would offer that, we would not be the only traffic generating project that's along Philbin Road, and I would hate to see this denied just because we happen to be the most current trigger for that to happen. So we're mindful of the traffic. Again, I think the study, once it's done, will show that in the grand scheme of things, we're not, exponentially changing the busyness of Philbin Road. Whether this goes or whether it doesn't go, you're going to still experience those traffic impacts that you have. There was some discussion about Connor Academy and the traffic there. There definitely is a surge around the morning time when school's in and when it's off, but a lot of the rest of the time it's much more manageable. So I just would ask that you guys look at it as a global thing, not just a peak hour thing, and consider that as well, because that all plays into these traffic analysis studies as well. There's a lot of things that go into that, not just the sensitive, heavy times. I mean, the argument can be made all over town that, certain times of day are much harder to get around than others. So it's just kind of the nature of the beast that we all live within, and in my opinion should not, impact a person's right to develop land, so as long as we're doing it responsibly. But in general, I do think that a lot of the comments that have been stated today are very reasonable, and I believe that without going into specifics, I think the conditions that are being placed on this, more than any of the projects I've seen in recent times, pretty much hit the mark on a lot of those. We recognize we need to get with Fort Hall, verify that we're within our rights and not in their easement. We've made contact with them preliminarily. We'll try to get that shifted. If our buildings need to move, we're very mindful of that. We recognize the lighting. We recognize the concern about trash and other things like that. One of the things I will mention, the reason that we have some of the things located the way that we do is because of the way that those garbage structures are collected. The front loading, drive-in, pickup, and dump. One of the things we hope that will help is those will be enclosed, so that may mitigate some of the wind issues that maybe is happening in other places. I can't speak to that, but I know these will be enclosed on 3 sides, so hopefully that will help contain that trash where it's at. But like I said, I know that the owner is very mindful that the neighbors have concerns, and that he wants to make, he wants to be a good neighbor in general terms. And that's why we've taken the time to try to go through some of this, because we knew there would be a lot of feedback and a lot of concerns. Just to kind of end with a statement, everybody likes development as long as it's not in their backyard. So, all the people everywhere else probably think, oh, that's a great idea. Look at those townhouses when they're built in 6 months or a year. So I just want to kind of part with that saying, we realize that it's always going to be more impactful to those that are directly around this. But I also think there's something to be said about, personal property rights and the ability to develop. One of the things that we have seen over time is, if there is vacant land and there's a street, plugging into it, whether that be a single family residential development or in this case townhouses, to say that we never thought that would develop or, whatever is just really hard to argue when you've got these streets planned that way. One of the things that we have done that we noticed in terms of, like, I think in the previous comments by Crystal about the blocking off or barricading, we do recognize that Kinghorn and Breezy Point are pretty straight shots, and so it is easy to kind of get that speed up. But one of the things, credit to Merrill, that we kind of discussed when the site plan is, you'll notice we kind of have a nice little turnaround that kind of is intended to be a way that people can't just zip through our place, and that, there's kind of some traffic calming whether they like it or not, because in order for them to come in there at a high rate of speed, there would be, some some issues with that. So, we have tried to look at this as much as we can. We know that's not a one-size-fits-all. We know that we're never going to meet the mark on everybody's concerns, but we're hoping that we can, do the best we can to be more pro-neighbor and be a good neighbor than just adversarial on everything. So as a whole, we still would ask that you approve this PUD as requested with the conditions stated, and we do feel like those conditions, as a global sense, meet a lot of the conditions or the concerns that have been shared tonight.
Okay, thank you. I declare the public hearing closed at this time. Commission members, how would you wish to proceed? I think we should have some discussion on this. And for those of you attending via GoToMeeting, if you could just raise a hand before turning on your mic so we don't have any bounce back. Shin?
Yeah, so I actually have a question, and I think it's more for discussion, and I'm still trying to figure it out. It says tenant storage, and that's what we're looking at with regards to this application. Mm-hmm. But then the applicant also mentioned that if the tenants don't rent it out,
Correct.
then it's going to be also public storage.
That's correct.
So I'm kind of wondering, are these like, why is it, it almost sounds like two separate enterprises.
I believe it's because of the zoning.
Yeah.
So there's two different zonings going on. So there's the residential zoning, and then there's the light industrial.
Well, I know the zoning permits it, but I'm just wondering, is it common to kind of bundle these two different enterprises?
I don't know. Are you asking staff? Or?
Yeah, I'm wondering, can we ask the staff for clarity?
We can ask the staff for clarity, that's fine.
So the question is it common to have storage managed for tenants and then for the public?
Light industrial and residential next to each other. Maybe?
Yeah, because I'm thinking like if the tenants also, if they find, going back to your affordability concern, is that, it's another rent, right? So they have to pay it. So if they don't pick it up, if the tenants don't pick it up and then it becomes public storage.
So from the
enterprises.
So being staff being bound by our ordinance, if they remove the industrial portion from the PUD and we're just considering townhomes, we'd be considering townhomes. And then access to that site would be the concern. And if that were addressed, the storage units would be permitted by building permit. And if they wanted to rent them to the tenants, they could. And if they wanted to rent them to the general public, they could. By ordinance.
Looks like we have another question from Jeremy Marley.
So I've seen this type of thing in larger cities like Kansas City area, where they rent out very similarly these types of storage units along with their townhomes. It actually is pretty common to see this in larger areas. It's not common in Pocatello, but a lot of things are uncommon in Pocatello, like the current growth that we're seeing. But this type of thing is actually fairly common to see outside of our area.
Okay.
If I could, sorry.
I'm sorry, Samantha?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify too, ordinance doesn't stipulate who it may rent to. It's really use specific. But the use of self-service storage is permitted. It is up to the applicant in cases where you're renting storage units on who they would rent that to.
Well, the reason I'm thinking, and this is really out, is because one of the concerns was of the public was the fact that although it says tenant storage, they might be also open to public. That also means more people coming in. So, but I mean, when you're just thinking purely of housing, you can kind of think like, well, they bundle it and sell it instead of like seeing as two different enterprises. That's just kind of. So I'm just trying to kind of figure out how we can address the public's concern with regards to that matters.
Any more comments or discussion from commission members?
I have a question for staff. Condition number 10 states that a 10 feet wide landscape buffer shall be erected along the common property line to the east. I'm wondering, this was brought up in the comments we received today about extending that along the north of the property, that residential area. Was there a reason that the north side was not included, whereas it's also a residential area?
Yeah, so the reason for that buffer requirement, as you'll recall during my presentation, they're requesting some waivers to setbacks. One of those building footprints are located 10 feet from the property line, from the rear, and the code requires provided. So as a waiver to the 20 feet, they're requesting 10. And to mitigate that, we're proposing that they install a landscape buffer to help break that up and provide more of a buffer between the two. Alternatively, our proposal would be that they remove the parking in front of those units and redesign it and bring it back to the commission for review. So that's why that condition's being requested there. The commission could certainly request that to see if the applicant would be willing to work with them on that. It should be noted that from the storage units, so when you have light industrial adjacent to a residential zone, it requires a buffer. And the buffer requirement there is 20 feet with trees similarly placed. I don't remember the exact width off the cuff. So there's a buffer between the storage and the townhome units to the south as well. So just something to consider. Madam Chair, I do also have several things where the comment received after the packet went out. There are several points brought up that I would like to just bring to the Commission's attention, if I may.
Yes.
So, for example, some things to consider. So lighting was brought up. The lighting standard in the light industrial zoning district is different than that in height than it is in the residential zoning district. I believe the maximum pole height in industrial may be 40 feet, where in residential, I believe it's 15. So there's some differences there that the Commission may want to consider in pole height. There's some quick common space lighting. One way to kind of deal with the lighting on this would be to request a lighting plan be submitted before it goes to council for that final decision, or brought back to the commission as well. Storage, continuously lit, tenants only. We've kind of already addressed some of that as to who that may be rented to. I do know that this has been to site plan at least twice. Merrill Quell's here, and I believe he was at least one of those meetings, but I do believe that, as the applicant had mentioned, that working with sanitation, they do have some preferences on where those enclosures are located. One way to deal with that would be to work with our sanitation department to make sure that they are amenable to those locations. It should be noted, though, if the commission would like those trash enclosures to be placed, trash locations to be placed in enclosures, you would want to have that as a condition, because city code does not require trash enclosures for these locations and residential zones. It's common and it's a requirement of our commercial development, but it's not a requirement in this area. So again, if you like those enclosures to be required, that would be a condition you would need to add. Snow storage, the applicant did state in their narrative that the CCNR, the homeowners association, would be responsible for snow storage, but certainly the applicant could provide the location of the snow storage on the plan. As mentioned, traffic impact analysis is being required by our Public Works Department at the time of preliminary plat submittal. Merrill Quell is present, and he can talk traffic further if the commission would wish. And same with construction access off of Breezy Point Drive. Just a couple things I wanted to just bring to the commission's attention for consideration.
Thank you. That was very informative. So commission members, we have the conditions that were previously outlined by staff. And from what I've put together with what Carl just said, we have additional concerns or conditions that could be addressed as well. One being the lighting plan, and then the plan with sanitation and the enclosures. We also have a concern of the Fort Hall irrigation district, if that's incorrect usage of terms, please excuse me, with their right-of-way there. Are there any others that staff note that I am missing?
I think that last one is one of the conditions, I believe, number.
The Fort Hall?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have one question. if I can follow up.
Number 9, okay, thank you. So just the 2 additional conditions then that could be added?
I believe snow storage location.
Snow storage, thank you.
I have a question on that, where that's already a law that, and I'm not going to be able to cite it, but essentially the snow that's on your property has to stay on your property. You can't blow it out into the streets, you can't put it on someone else's property. Does that need to be made a condition?
Now, from my point, where this is inside, you're not going to get any of the snow removal here onto the other streets. I mean, it's a big area in the parking lot. We do have in our standards for streets and subdivisions to provide snow, just in the last 3 years, snow places to put them. However, we do not in these type of complexes. That doesn't fit there. You bring up a good point. I mean, snow removal is always a concern if we get snow in that given year. And I don't think it's a bad idea in some of them corners and some of those areas to look at snow removal and storage areas for that. So I would recommend that we look at that in those areas and see if we can provide that. So we're looking into the future for that. But
In many of the other plans that we've seen previously, there has been like a lot that has been left open for like drainage or just open space that may take some of that snow removal or snow melt. Is there a reason why we don't see that in this plan?
So the reason why I'm saying it is we haven't got the full construction drawings and stuff.
Okay.
You're going to see that this open space, I can pretty much envision what the plan is. The open space right there is going to be dropped down maybe a foot lower than around and everything. That 1 foot is going to take the 100-year event storm.
Is that what you see as the dog park area?
I can see that as the dog park
Okay.
being just a bit lower and that too. I can see some of your storage for snow and everything off to the side in the areas of the corners where the storage units are at. It'd have to be pushed and then probably hauled if needs be, if we get that big of a surf. But I do see those areas capable of taking that area and stuff there.
Okay.
But again, where we're dealing with just the plan unit development there, the higher density and stuff, we still need to look at those in long term, but all the detail in the plans have not been produced at this time.
Okay, Carl?
Yeah, and just as a reminder too, the commission will see the preliminary plat come before them should this be approved. So you could also request to see where preliminarily that stormwater retention would come in, because preliminary plats are required to bring in preliminary stormwater calculations. So just kind of to be able to get an idea during that as a double check.
Okay,
would
thank
be
you.
An option.
Thank you.
Your condition too that you said about the construction entrances off of Philbin, I would put that in there right now too, so that when we go to council and that through that PUD and that is not driving down Kinghorn with the bigger trucks and that they can stay within their own property. So we can put that as a condition, and then we will carry that through to the subdivisions.
Can you have, obviously, once a CO is granted, you have to have 2 points of access into any neighborhood. That doesn't exist during the construction phase?
During the construction phase, no, it does not. When you start getting livability in that, it actually is 30 or more that you have to have the second access for fire code. And in this, they could have the access, the construction access and all that off of Philbin. And I can see they do not need to go inside this subdivision, such as the breezy point that you're seeing right now, the home building and that. There's really no other way to get to those houses but through the subdivision, unfortunately.
Shin, I believe before we got started in this, you had a question. Has that been answered, or do you still have that question?
No, I think I'm kind of asking the question, I think follow up to the concern that requests trees to be required along the north fence line. And I know that has been requested. I'm wondering looking at the diagram, the trees don't really have to be everywhere. It just only seems like to be in the areas that's, I guess, possibly overseeing the private residences up north. I'm wondering should we consider that as a condition?
Are you asking for clarification on where the trees should be?
No, I'm wondering, I guess, I think this is more of a question for commission members on kind of adding a condition. Because I know the trees are on the east.
I'm curious about that too, Shannon. I'm wondering, I see that it's almost a 45-foot setback on the west side and 50 feet on the, down to, I guess, 37 feet on that extreme east group of townhomes. I'm wondering if that's enough of a buffer, that 50 feet, or if we should consider asking them to plant trees along that north side.
How does that fall in line with staff? How does that fall in line with?
I mean, it wouldn't be a requirement, but it would be just,
I would recommend that any additional conditions, I would stick to the criteria for what's within that planning and development. And if you believe that addresses the criteria, that's something that the commission could consider. It's not part of staff's recommendation because of the distance there, and also that buffer is not a requirement of code. But certainly it's something that the commission could consider.
Okay, is that something that can be addressed? I mean, like, so not having the additional condition of the landscaping or the trees, can that be addressed through the changes in a lighting plan? Does that make sense?
Say that again, Mark.
So like if we address the lighting concerns, would the tree or landscaping concerns of that section also need to be addressed?
Two separate things.
Okay.
But I think what Carl is saying is that what we're here to decide is, does this fit within the city's guidelines of what they've established?
Correct.
And although I see Shin's concern, and I wonder about it too, technically that's not, I mean, that's probably something for the city council to decide if they want that.
Or something that comes
Yeah,
along
make
in the
that a
next.
requirement. I mean, certainly if I was over there in that northerly subdivision, I would want the trees there, but I don't think that, I don't think that's a requirement that the developer has to if he doesn't want to. It's not a city code or anything like that once they've met that setback requirement.
Do we have any more discussion from commission members that are attending the go-to meeting? Okay, seeing none. Any additional discussion? Okay. So commission members, at this time, I would request, a motion made. We're gonna have to make, some additional conditions to the motion.
so I'll make a motion.
Okay.
So I make a motion to recommend approval of Breezy Commons Plan Unit Development from Jonathan Vincent, finding the applicant does meet standards for approval under Chapter 17.02.140 of Pocatello Municipal Code with the 14 conditions of approval that was developed by staff in the original report. In addition, we would add 4 more conditions. One would be request that a lighting plan be submitted. We also
I'm sorry, I can't understand what you're saying.
okay, so should I read that again?
No, just start from the new conditions that you want.
Yeah, so in addition to the 14 conditions that's listed in the staff report, we would like to add 4 more conditions. And they are, lighting plan should be submitted. Also, trash enclosure should be required. Also, a snow removal plan should be submitted. And also, the Breezy Point Drive to be closed during, to any traffic during construction. So,
Can I have you repeat the last two, please?
The last two is submit a snow removal plan for review by staff. And the fourth additional condition would be that the Breezy Point Drive be closed to any traffic during construction.
Confirming that it was Breezy Point and not Kinghorn, is that correct?
Oh, sorry.
I believe it's Breezy Point.
Breezy Point, okay, thank you.
Commissioner, if I may, one point of clarification on the lighting plan. Would you like that to be brought back to the commission or reviewed by staff?
Could you repeat that again?
The additional condition regarding the lighting plan, would you like that to be reviewed, brought back to the commission or reviewed by staff?
I think it would be fine with the chair, as long as the chair sees it and the chair signs off on it. You'd be okay with that?
To have it brought back to the commission?
Yes, I think only for you to see and review.
I do not feel comfortable making that decision. I would appreciate the commission to
For lighting plan?
address that.
If we
Yeah.
get to another meeting?
Yeah. So we would review it, then the commission would be, so the staff would bring it back to the commission for review.
During the preliminary plat or?
Yes, during the preliminary part.
So all of these conditions then would be presented with the preliminary plan?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, Aislinn, if you could call for the vote, please.
Rue?
Yes.
Phillips?
Yes.
Marley?
Yes.
Thank you. Stoddard?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Motion carries.
So at this time, the regularly scheduled Planning and Zoning Commission meeting has ended. We will continue our regular meeting and move it into a work session to discuss the Pocatello Comprehensive Plan.